Hello, I'm Paul Cowling with Film Independent, and welcome to this week's Coffee Talk. Coming to you from a very AC, chilly Palm Springs, so I've got a little scratchy throat, but I've been staying inside, so I think it's nothing more than just suffering from the AC. For those of you who don't know us, Film Independent is the non-profit LA-based arts organization that produces the Film Independent Spirit Awards, plus yearly screenings, conversations, workshops, and filmmaker labs. Membership's open to everyone, and you can find out more at filmindependent.org. This week, we're mixing things up a bit, and we're going to have three amazing creative producers join us. They are responsible for some of the most acclaimed films of the 90s and 2000s. First up is the LA-based producing team behind Bonafide Productions. They are known for their superb taste, and they have a knack for finding original stories that connect with audiences. Their first produced feature was Steven Soderbergh's third film, King of the Hills, one of my favorites. And they went on to produce Crumb, Cold Mountain, Bee Season, Little Children, Lowdown, and Juliet Naked. They are two-time Spirit Award winners for Election and Little Miss Sunshine, and they were Oscar-nominated producers and Spirit Award nominated for Nebraska. Their most recent release was last year's Peanut Butter Falcon, which is one of the biggest indie hits of last year. Please welcome Albert Berger and Ron Yerxa. Here they come. Hey, Albert, your mic is muted right now.
Hey.
Hello. Hello.
Ron is semi-masked up. How you both doing?
We're doing okay, hanging in there like everyone else, doing our best.
Very chic mask you have there, Ron.
Pardon me?
Very chic mask you have.
Oh yeah, this is the guy in the neighborhood makes these. It was a real issue whether to wear one that the cleaners made or wear one that this other guy made. I'll change it mid seminar.
Shopping locally, that's good to hear. You are both, I assume, in Santa Monica, obviously in different places, right? You're both on the west side?
No, I'm in the Hollywood Hills, Laurel Canyon, and Ron is actually in Culver City there at our world headquarters.
Right. You live in Santa Monica though, Ron, right?
Yes, I do. Yep.
And joining us from the East Coast is the New York-based producer who started her career in the 90s at Ted Hope and James Seamus's company, Good Machine. She then founded This Is That with Ted Hope, Anthony Bregman, and Diana Victor. Both companies were responsible for some of the most acclaimed films of the past 30 years, including Y Tu Mamá También, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. As a producer, her credits include The Savages, Adventureland, The American, 20th Century Women, and Can You Ever Forgive Me? And she won the Spirit Award for The Diary of a Teenage Girl. She is currently president of production at Archer Gray in New York. So pleased to welcome Anne Carey to join us. Where are you, Anne? Here she is.
Hi. Hi, guys.
Hello. Hi.
How are you doing? How are you doing, Anne?
I'm good, thank you. Hanging in New York City.
Great.
Good. Yeah.
This has disturbing echoes of the dating game.
Well, we're really thrilled to have the three of you here. The way this works is I'm going to step off this virtual stage for about half an hour and let the three of you kind of talk shop for 30 minutes. And we'll take questions after 30 minutes. Those listening in can use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen here. And I'll come back to take some of those questions, try and get through as many as possible. But for now, I'll let the three of you take it away.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
So,
Anne, what's your outlook on the world of entertainment today?
What is my outlook on the world of entertainment? I want to go back to the movie theaters. That's what I really want to do. I really wish I could go see the David Copperfield movie in a theater in New York City this weekend, more than anything, but I can't. So I hope to be able to do that soon.
Albert?
Yeah, I wonder when things are going to return to any kind of normalcy. I mean, how has your working been? We've been developing like crazy, but in no hurry to race into production on anything.
Yeah, we've also been developing a lot of stuff. We had movies that I'd hoped to make this fall that pushed. One of them features the protagonist is an elderly woman, and because there's no insurance and no way to keep her guarantee safety, that's one that we've had to push until I don't know when. Actually, I guess until there's some sort of medicine or a vaccine. And the other one, again, we just couldn't get it off the ground in time, so we pushed to the spring. The only thing we have been doing lately, which has been kind of fun, is trying to do, that is a little bit of production, is trying to do some documentary work, which we've actually been doing by sending iPhones to people and letting them film themselves and then send them back to us. So that's been at least making something. That's been fun.
Yeah, we've got something like that going to a documentary. By the way, I think maybe we should mute when we're not talking just because there's an echo, I think. But anyway, yeah, there's that. And also for the kind of films that at least we have on the agenda that we were supposed to make in May and then kick to the fall, then kick to the spring, the whole idea of starting and then stopping just seems unthinkable, at least on the modest budgets that we'll be working on. So it feels like, at least for the time being with our narrative stuff, we're going to wait until the coast is clear.
And I also think insurance, right? We can't get insurance for anything. That's the other tough part of it on the independent movies. I think Amazon and Netflix and those companies that have the pockets to back it up or still are under some insurance policies have been able to at least resume finishing things.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's a good time for reading, though. That's for sure.
Yeah. I did see 5 guys like in a black unmarked van the other day around the corner from my house with a camera. So it was clear that somebody's trying to shoot something in New York City. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I guess New York is doing well, huh? At the moment.
I think we're doing better. Obviously, we had a really, really, really rough start, but right now our numbers are pretty low. I think our infection rate is under 1%, and I think the whole state's only got hospitalizations of probably under 600 people. And no, our numbers are really good right now. The question is how to keep them that way. But so far so good, and they've started a little bit of production for outside shooting and soap operas and stuff like that, but no real features mounted yet. But I think people are trying, and I think TV is going to try to come back. So,
do you see any either benefits or long-term changes on the landscape of being an independent film producer brought on by the way people have been consuming films in the last 6 months or so?
I think it'll be really interesting. I don't know what you guys have thought. I certainly feel I had projects that even 6 months ago felt makeable that now maybe feel less makeable just because of the logistics of the project or maybe the tenor of the subject matter. And likewise, I've had things that I felt were going to be very hard to get off the ground that might be easier now because the subject matter maybe feels a little bit more uplifting or the story feels a little bit more relevant or it seems COVID friendly in terms of production. So I think there's a lot of that introspection going on back and forth. I really wish I had a movie that was about 3 people in a house in Sardinia. I could probably make that. Yeah.
Yeah, although I think we're going to be getting pretty sick of those movies in about a year from now.
Yeah.
Have you found that, you're modifying any of your projects to deal with the current circumstances? We have one thing that we're set to go and, a lot of big crowd scenes, even though it's a small movie. And, we really want to hold on to that, but we're just not quite sure when's the right time.
Yeah, I think 2 of the things that I have a lot of crowd scenes, but they're also period pieces. So I think the question is, can we build some of that archivally? I guess we've looked at a movie like Milk, for example, and figured out how they integrated, news footage and real life footage into the story. We did that on the movie Lost Girls that I made. Because Liz Garbus came from the documentary world, we used a lot of archival footage to sort of extend the reach of our movie, just because we didn't have the resources to fill some of the stuff, or we were shooting scenes that we wouldn't have been able to recreate. And I think that's led me to think about how we can do that more and more, which is kind of fun. And I'm looking for things that take place in New York when the city's really down and out, because I think that'll be easy to redo. 1979, like it's now. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you guys? Yeah.
That's when I was in film school there. I remember it fondly. 1979. We're working away on stuff. We've got a couple things that have been set to go for a while. Anxious to get back to production, but as I say, mostly it's developing. We're in full swing on that. A lot of the Zoom calls, which I'm sure we're all suffering through or doing. I'm wondering, do you have what is the next thing you're going to be doing?
I don't know. I honestly don't have any idea. I don't think it's the first time I've said I don't know. I don't honestly have any idea. I think I say that all the time. But I really don't know right now. Which is a little terrifying. Something will come up.
Yeah.
Oh, it always does. It always has. I think it's just a matter, like I said, we're doing this documentary right now, and that's kind of fun. And then a lot of development, and I don't honestly know what will go first. I have projects that have studios and directors and need actors. I have projects that have great scripts and need actors so we can get financing. I mean, I'm sure like you guys, I have things in every single stage. I have stuff in development for sort of international TV co-productions, and maybe that'll come together faster. But if you said, you got to tell me what your next movie is or I'll shoot you, you'd have to shoot me.
Can you talk about what your doc's about, or is that under wraps?
It's a little bit under wraps, but it's sort of about, I think in broad strokes, we're doing we're doing visits to various communities around the country through individuals to ask them to tell us how they're getting through COVID, sort of emotionally and financially. It's really about the financial impact on the most financially vulnerable Americans.
So this started after COVID, the idea for this, or?
The idea came after COVID.
Yeah.
We got a call from somebody who was interested in exploring that idea. And
we have an interesting thing where we had started a movie before COVID. It's this thing about Shia LaBeouf started an acting school in South LA, Slauson Rec, and it's sort of the documenting of the formation of that school and the people involved and a performance that they're ultimately going to give. And we were able to just, as the world changed, that theater group had to change. So we were fortunate to be able to, just continue working on it as they had to deal with the new realities. So who knows where the whole thing's going, the whole notion of live theater is anyone's guess. But given that we're still in the middle of it, we're able to still keep going. So.
There is some really cool live theater stuff and performance stuff starting to happen in New York, not necessarily film related, but I just love seeing how people are adapting. There are a lot of what people are calling porch concerts here, right? Where little bands or combos are showing up on porches or on street corners, and people can gather, and those have been kind of great. And then there's a theater thing happening at one of the cemeteries, Greenwood Cemetery, I think, where they're saying that you sort of get an itinerary and you have to follow to different destinations within the cemetery, and it's sort of performative and interactive. And I'm kind of excited to see how people are trying to create stuff still during this. I don't know what version of that's happening in LA. There has to be some version of that happening there.
Well, there's been a lot of interesting stuff with music in these sort of on these screens, these Zoom performance kind of things. And of course, there's the drive-in idea, with theatrical, which I haven't experienced yet. But we had a film at Sundance that, we were really, really happy with the way it went. It was called The Last Shift, and it was very difficult, though, the whole distribution climate, and nobody acquired it for a while, but now all of a sudden there's interest, and we'll be back on the festival circuit, it seems, and as well as a distributor. But this whole notion of drive-in is now now a big thing for some of these film festivals, and so we'll see how that works.
Yeah, I think the New York Film Festival is doing outdoor screenings with Rooftop Films, and Rooftop Films here in New York has been doing some drive-ins, and it's been pretty cool.
I've been getting technical feedback from my wife on text that I was possibly responsible for the echoes, so I've been on mute. And now I just got a text that I'd been muted for too long, so I have to say something.
Got the same. My wife just came in and demanded that you start talking, so that's good. They're working in consort.
Well, I'm on a iPad propped up by a box of antiseptic towels, so I have to reach up. It's not a simple stroke. Anyhow, though, just along the lines that there is a line here about what good is coming out of all this. It does seem like this festival we like a lot, Middleburg in Virginia, is perhaps doing outdoor screenings and screenings from balconies at this hotel that looks out on a big lawn, and then there can be drive-in screenings. It just seems like all over the place people are finding new ways of gathering, and in small groups, and in a way, I mean, it's a terrible thing overall, but it forces people to really kind of rethink the viewing experience and probably upgrade wherever they live, and get much more conversant with all the platforms and what they really need to subscribe to see the films they want. And so in that way, it's probably very vital. But in another sense, it's sort of like this coffee talk where we have no idea, except for my wife sending these remarks, that there's anyone out there. And that was sort of the main thing we'd hear from directors even before the virus was, we're concerned that maybe my film would go directly to a platform, and how will I ever know what the audience dynamic is like, and how will you have that thrill of your friends and your relatives to see the film. And now it's sort of gone full circle where how can we get our film on a platform? But I think keeping things live, even in these festivals, when they show a film that's kind of pre-recorded or a discussion that's pre-recorded, it has so much less interest if you think you can see it anytime, or that's not actually happening at the moment. Like whoever is watching this, if they see it later, it was live because it's 12/19 on Thursday in LA. But otherwise, it's, some of the stuff you see, maybe for a while I think, oh, I'm seeing something as it happens, only to find out it was recorded 2 days ago. So anyhow, that's all to say, however they do it, I think festivals should have a live component even on the internet, so people have the sense they're actually experiencing something as it happens.
No, I think that's definitely true. But I do feel there are ways to watch and see things, and I feel like every week I'm making a list of things I want to see and things that are coming out, or old movies that are showing up someplace. And I feel, it's always hard to keep up with things, but I think it's harder now, and I'm trying to balance that. If I stare at my screen all day on Zooms, do I want to stare at another screen later? So I think it's about finding that right balance. But I do think there's a lot of exciting stuff to see out there. So that's been kind of fun.
Well, maybe we should put the COVID thing behind and move to the portion where we grill you about your work.
Yeah.
I had a question for you. How did Diary of a Teenage Girl come about? Because that's a movie I really loved when I saw it. I saw it recently. It really holds up. How did that all come together?
It came in a funny way. Mari and I had been talking about doing a whole nother project that was based on a This American Life story. This is my recollection of it. And we were working to get the rights figured out. And at the end of the day, the woman decided she didn't want to have her life adapted. So that sort of fell away, and it was kind of one of those, but what else have you got kind of conversations, you know, because we had enjoyed that process together, and she brought up that she had optioned the graphic novel Diary of a Teenage Girl and had written a theater version of it and was just about to perform it down at a theater I go like that, downtown in a theater downtown. And I had I knew the graphic novel and liked it, and was excited by that idea. And she did a great job with the play, and I think felt afterwards that it wasn't out of her system, that she wanted to keep trying to work it, you know, wanted to stay with that story, and could it really work as a film. And she hadn't directed any film stuff before. She'd been an actress and a writer in theater, and really the Sundance Labs were super important because we got support from the labs for her to go to the writer's lab and the director's lab. And I think she was a rock star there, because she's a rock star. And we came away with a little bit of financing to start to think about casting and budgeting and how to put the movie together. And then worked to put the producing team together. We had a great group of women involved in producing that movie, but really it was all about us just keeping up with Mari, right? It was one of those, you know, it's that beautiful experience with a first-time writer-director where, and I've had this a couple of times, I think Todd Field was this way, you know, I didn't produce that movie directly, but Good Machine did, but I had been involved early on, where you just feel you're just keeping up with them, right? It's not like you're going to make their movie with them. You're just going to be there to help them make smart decisions. And Mari was that way. I mean, she just took off, and it came together, and was smart about the budget and smart about the cast. And it was a tricky one to cast. Casting the role that became the Alex Skarsgård role was hard, because it was very challenging to find somebody who was brave enough to play that role and not be icky. I mean, there were a couple of people who wanted it, and you'd think like, oh my God, that would be a very icky version of a movie. But I think he was so sort of gentle and seemed sort of naive and ill-directed, you know, but he didn't ever really seem malevolent. And I think that was a super critical part of that. And then sort of the discovery of Bel Powley was just a gift. And Kristen Wiig obviously was a huge anchor piece to making the movie, you know, watchable and seeable. But it was really, and then Mari finding the animation version and you know, what animated and what didn't animate was really also helpful, I think, in terms of how to tell the story about this young woman's sort of sexual, you know, coming of age. That's really how it came about. Yeah.
I take it that Kristen Wiig was an important piece as far as the financing, or at least, as you say, anchoring.
Yeah, she definitely was, of those three actors, the one who at the time added the most value, for sure. I mean, Alexander also, because of what's the Alan Ball show, True Blood, you know, he had some international appeal as well, but it was not an expensive movie, and we had financiers who were brave and smart, and we kept the number, you know, down.
Yeah, well, it was an incredible movie, and I think, you know, really a great instinct of yours, given that she hadn't made a movie before. But, you know, she's one of those rare people. She's made 3 movies, and from my point of view, they're all great. And
I agree.
You don't see that right out of the gates so often. But it was just, it sounds like you just had a feeling that she could make that transition from theater or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, she, you know, like she just really, like I said, you could just feel it, right? It was just like electric in her. She was gonna figure out how to get it done. So I was in the right place at the right time, I think, and was able to get some support and attention. Like I said, through, you know, Sundance. Michelle was so great, and Ann Lai, and the whole Rachel Chanoff. They were really, they really saw it too. So that really got us the momentum that we needed. And Phil Englehorn from Cinereach was a big part of it. And we got some good grants. I mean, it was challenging material. There were definitely people who were not up for the risk of that story. But it was kind of, it was kind of a, you either got it or you didn't kind of movie. To me, it was super, super exciting to tell that movie.
Ron, those are kind of great things when you have a director that you just have an instinct or great faith in, and the whole thing is contributing, but you know that it's going to head in a very strong direction. I mean, those are always the easiest experiences.
Right. I mean, you guys must be able to cite those experiences when you felt like this, I mean, listen, no movie's easy to make. Some are more fun to make than others. But I think when the director is that clear about what they want and also that pragmatic about what they want, solution oriented and really, really pushing for what they want, but understanding the difference that every decision is not a major decision, I think that just is the best kind of collaborative experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been our experience with Alexander Payne, for instance, where, it's that he is going to make a great movie. There's a huge leap that takes place from the script to the movie itself. The scripts are always very strong, but he really has in mind what he's going to do. And it's kind of remarkable to watch him on set and work with actors. And often, as a producer, you'll have an idea, but it's almost like you can wait rather than say it, because eventually, he'll be trying it out if it's a good idea, as well. And it's just, and also there's often with those kind of directors, and maybe Mari's the same way, they're the most collaborative because, they know that they can say no. If you have an idea or somebody on the set has an idea, they have that confidence in what they're going to do, that they know.
Exactly. They're confident enough to be open to an idea and confident enough to hold their course, but also I think that's super, super important. But Alexander doesn't write all his movies, right?
No, but he always writes on them. I mean, initially him and Jim were, doing all the writing on their movies. And then eventually, Nebraska was a script that Bob Nelson wrote. And, we've worked with him on other things where he jumps in, though at a certain point and, does what he needs to do to bridge the gap between where the script is and where he wants.
What's in his head. Yeah. What are you guys going to do next? What's next for you? In a dream world. Yeah.
We have a couple things. I mean, Farnsworth House is something we've been involved with for a long time. Do you know that project at all?
I do. Yes. I like that project.
Yeah.
And that filmmaker. Yeah.
Yeah. We've come very close. Richard Press wrote it, is going to direct it. And we were supposed to start in May. So that's on the docket. And we have a small film called Miles that won the Nickel Award a couple years ago that we're just starting to cast. And we have a director, Harula Rose, that is a filmmaker. So we're excited about that. We're working with Ray Romano on something. And, so we've got a lot of things that are supposed to go, but we'll see. We're waiting impatiently.
The Ray Romano movie is the one set in Queens, right? That one?
Exactly.
That's a good one. That's good. So you'll be over here. I was thinking this morning about the summer that me and Ted and Anthony were producing Jesse Peretz's movie on one block in Staten Island, and you guys were doing the Todd Fields movie around the corner on another block in Staten Island, and our crews kept showing up to the wrong sets.
I remember that well. I remember we came to visit you there.
Yeah.
Little do we know we'd be working with Jesse years later on Juliet Naked.
That's right. I love Juliet Naked. That's a lovely movie.
He was a great collaborator. We loved working with him.
But that was a funny hot summer. I remember that. And there were the locusts, the cicadas were out, so there were like cicada carcasses all over Staten Island, which I remember vividly.
Yeah, I mean, Ron can jump in here, but we've had a long relationship with you, Anne, and in some ways it's been interesting because we kind of do the same thing, this sort of bridge between, the studios or the Searchlight type places and independent films. And although you're in New York and we're in LA, and often, adapting from books. And there was even that one weird moment where we were looking for a fund together with our dear pals Steve Golan and Ted Hope,
right.
and Anthony Bregman, and who else was involved with that, Ron? Was there another party?
There was a third party, wasn't it? Was it Michael London? Am I making that up? Was it?
I don't think.
No, I think it was you guys, Steve Golan and us, Ted Anstey and I. I don't know that there was another one.
Christine wasn't involved, was she? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
No.
That's all that I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a different time, which maybe leads into Ann, Albert, whatever you think about it. Just every once in a while, particularly we have interns, that are graduate students at, UCLA or AFI or SE somewhere. And, I think about it in the sense that they're like graduating, coming into this business, but also for people who are out there. I mean, I guess the Pollyanna side, I say it's kind of the last 10 years, maybe there's been a very interesting time to be a producer, even though there's obvious difficulties, but in a way by being, I guess what I'm alluding to is it's more democratic as far as access to information and tools, and also the proliferation of the platforms kind of make the buyers very clear and obvious, at least in one level, who to go to. But how do you, what's your response? Is this both the best and the worst of times, or more one than the other for a producer?
I would say I think it's about the same. I still don't know what movie I'm going to make next. I still am always reading and looking for new stories. I still am trying to understand what's working and not working. I'm still trying to do the smoke and mirrors of how I can get a movie off the ground and feeling inevitable with no money in place. And there's lots of different ways to get movies out there. I think it's just I always think about it as being sort of the appetite for the volatility. I always think independent producers and writers and directors have potentially a greater appetite or interest or abilities to sustain the volatility. And I think, agents and managers, television executives, probably less so. But if I was, again, going back through some sort of notes in various years, I always used to collect the keynote speakers from the Gotham Awards or from the Spirit Awards. And, I remember Joe Drake gave one a bunch of years ago that I still give out to students and young interns and producers, just about how to find your story and fall in love with it and stick in it. And you can look at all the things that don't happen, or you can look at all the things that did happen. So I do think it's a glass half full, glass half empty thing. Obviously people need to earn a living, and that's hard to do on super low budget movies, but it is a luxury to do this, right? I mean, what we do. And I think if you've got the stomach for the volatility of it, I don't actually know that it's harder now. Maybe there's more different kinds of people calling themselves producers now, right? There's a new producer management company that started, and there's, so what is a producer? I know is something that producers talk about all the time, who really produces, whatever that means. And I think I like producing with partners. I think there's all sorts of different ways to be producers, but I don't like to be called a producer from the 1990s, because I feel that I'm a producer today. So I still have to figure it out the same way. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, we were really working more than, we were making more stuff than ever before the virus, but it is very frustrating these days because of distribution. It's just sad to see that, that's such a difficult bridge to get over. I mean, both with Peanut Butter Falcon and with this movie, The Last Shift, that was just at Sundance. We thought, both films were great. And God, it took like a year to find a distributor on Peanut Butter Falcon. Nobody wanted it forever, and hard to get it into festivals. And, we knew in that case that was an audience film. And with this one, it's a movie about race and class in the Midwest right now. And, on some level, what could be more timely? But, you just do not easily have that option anymore. And we probably made 30 films and never had a film, that didn't get distribution. So, it's really turned into a battle. And, it's not like we've got anything against streaming, but it is hard to duplicate that experience of seeing something in a movie theater with an audience. And particularly when it's a audience-friendly movie. I mean, you can't get that at home, sleeping on the couch. So.
I don't know. I mean, I don't mind the streaming thing. And I made a movie last year with Liz Garbus, this movie Lost Girls, that was at Amazon, and we didn't figure it out at Amazon, and we moved it to Netflix. It was, that movie had a life at Netflix that it never would have had we made it theatrically. We were able to make it with exactly the cast that we wanted and weren't driven by sort of foreign sales models of movie star chasing. And it had a very large outreach, again, larger than I think it ever would have had theatrically, and they were very supportive of it. So,
no, sure. I just meant more comedies or more things that you want to, you feed off of the response to the movie. The thing
is, the streamers is they keep saying they don't want, I had this conversation with somebody there. They don't want art house movies, or what they would call art house adjacent movies, where we've probably made the vast majority of our movies. Those don't really rise to the top at the streamers unless they have super fancy movie stars in them. But you guys should feel great about Peanut Butter Falcon. It's a movie that I came to very late, but it played across the street from me at the Angelica movie theater forever. And I bought a ticket and went and sat in the movie theater and saw it and had a phenomenally enjoyable time. But you guys proved everybody wrong. I mean, that's a hugely successful movie. You should be so happy.
Yeah, we are happy, but in the year it took to, find a home for it, there wasn't a lot of joy at that point. But I mean, Roadside did a great job with it, and
those guys are great. Yeah,
and our partners from the Armory, who we produced the movie with, actually, financed the release. So you don't always have that luxury. But But anyway. So, Ron, what do you think?
Sorry for the second delay. Do you guys hear an echo, or is it okay? I don't know.
I have no echo. You sound perfect.
No, okay, great. Well, no, that's all true. I mean, it is I think this year will be in every way, a huge, whatever you want to call it, pivotal or transformational year for the culture and for entertainment. And the market forces obviously have changed what audiences expect in certain places. Like Anne said, when you say you can't wait to go back into a theater, that's it's going to be very interesting what kind of films really pull people to come back. I mean, obviously the default is huge visual experiences that but will there even be the kind of wrenching drama or something, or smaller film that used to exist? But overall, when you have so many buyers on platforms, and it's somewhat of a mystery exactly what they want or what their algorithm supports, but it is a time where there's a lot of buyers, a lot of competition, and a lot of serious films end up on platforms, films that we like and would be happy to make. So in that way, it's very optimistic. I'm sure there's a whole array of their best performing films, is like what Netflix released a couple of weeks ago, that are not films that we probably would make. But just as long as there's a decent sized audience, it's good to have that outlet. But I even meant in the broader sense, to some degree, it's been happening for years, that this kind of exclusive country club aspect to who is making films, financing films, producers. It's something that oddly, I think probably all three of us have missed. I mean, we don't regret missing it, but we haven't been part of it, that it's just a kind of structure that is waning or disintegrating or whatever, along with a lot of other things. But in place of it is something very, you know, vibrant. And if it ends up that the platforms do well and theaters come back substantially, you know, we've kind of improved, you know, both forks in the road. But I think just overall, I was asking about, you know, it just seems like so much of the skills that a producer might want to talk about or need, or that used to be a couple of elite film schools, you know, a lot of that is available on the internet, and it, you know, was in person. It's always, you know, what I say, you know, you can go so many places pre-virus to hear talks that are the same thing that you'd pay a lot of money if you went to an elite film school, but you're getting the same information. And you know, on it just seems now on the internet with like the Sundance Lab and like Dear Producer and all these places where you can get a lot of very, very helpful information on everything that is kind of the same subject as would be covered in graduate school. So anyhow, that's a plus side, that, you know, it's kind of democratically all there for everybody.
I hope that's true. It would be great if it was true.
Here's
Hi,
Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hey, you ready for some questions? I hate to interrupt, but
No, bring it on.
time flies. So we have a lot of questions coming in, and more will trickle in as we're chatting. But so here's one that you might think is a bit of a loaded question from Stephanie to all of you. Are you open to reading new projects? And if so, how do we submit to you? No one wants to go? Maybe I'll ask it this way. How do new projects come to you? And part two of that question, how do new writers get their work read?
Well, you know, just to answer the part that we were all hesitant to jump in there, for fear that we'd be possibly feel guilty about, you know, it's tough because when you take in a project, you know, you're under the responsibility of reading it, and then that's a burden right there. But it has the potential, I guess, joy of discovering something that's good. That, you know, I think a great story is the kind of screenplays that we found in a very unorthodox way. You know, they didn't come from agents. They weren't, you know, something that was traditional Hollywood. So those are great, satisfying stories for us. So in that way, we're very open. I only say that because there's probably, I don't know how many people are on this coffee talk, but probably a couple saying, well, how come you haven't gotten back to me on my script if you're so damn open? But overlooking that, we are kind of open to talk about scripts. It's much better if someone emails us with the idea or premise, because 95% of scripts that might be actually excellent scripts, but they're not in our wheelhouse or sweet spot, or however you want to describe it. It's just not something we do. So to get the whole script on something we'd never do, no matter how good it is, you know, that's sort of undesirable. So I would say how we handle it, it's great if they have a lawyer or whatever, but if they just send an email with, I have a script and here's the premise, does that seem like something you'd want to read?
I would say also with all of us, all three of us, you can tell what we do by the work we've done. And so, you know, simply by looking at our films, you know, you'll be able to tell whether it's even in our ballpark, and that might, you know, spare somebody writing the letter. But I think Ron's right. It's good to know what it's about first.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I also think, in addition to that, I have been involved in producing a handful of movies that are period coming of age movies, right? And I think I've been involved in making some really good ones. So I think the reality is I might not want to make another one of those. I might want to tell a story that I haven't told already. So like you guys, my company is small, myself, an executive, creative executive, an assistant, an intern or two. We read everything ourselves if it comes in. Our obligation is always to our own projects and things that are going to generate the income that we run the company on. So to some degree, we're not going to take on untested, unproduced screenwriters very often. And our policy would be to not take those scripts in. And when I get that letter that says, to whom it may concern, I've written 30 unproduced screenplays, would you like to read one? My answer is no. But when I get the letter that says, dear Ann Carey, I like the work that you've done and I respect what Archer Gray does and I've seen your most recent work and I have something that I'd love you to take a look at and this is what it's about and this is who I am. We might answer that one because it's felt like you said, like it's been directed to us and it's very specific and the sender has sort of done their research.
Yeah, I was about to say that people should do their homework, right? Don't just sort of blast every producer in town.
I mean, 10 well-focused emails is going to be a lot more effective than 100 unfocused emails.
This next question is kind of related to this. It's an anonymous question, but they're asking if you have advice for early career filmmakers, directors specifically, to leverage their micro-budget feature films to get future jobs as directors.
One thing that comes to mind was the guys that made Peanut Butter Falcon. We got that script from a very close friend who said, you got to read this. And along with the script, they did an unbelievable, what's it called again? Like a proof of concept, where they took every scene in the movie and filmed about 10 seconds. And Zach, the lead actor, was in it. So you could see that Zach could carry a movie. They made like a boat. They had a real DIY sensibility and they knew where to put the camera. And, you just kind of breeze through this thing. And, it was, you could tell that they both had, great passion for making the movie and they knew what they were doing and, that the actor could carry it. So that was, I'm not always proof of concepts, I can take or leave, but that one was one that combined with the script, you really felt there was something there.
Question from John. Asks you, do you as producers kind of share projects with each other? Like if it's not quite in your wheelhouse, would you recommend it to another producer?
I think we've shared projects with one another. I think we've looked for projects to do together. And I think you guys, so I think our taste has been compatible enough that, and frankly, we've probably competed for things over the years. But if there's something that I love that's not for us for one reason or another, for my company one reason or another, I would always like to see if I can help it get a hand up. But certainly, as compatible as our tastes are, we've definitely done that.
It's our highest level pass when we get a project and we say, well, we can't do it, but we should send it to Anne.
And one day we'll find one to do together.
A question here from Jim says, do you think there's anything from this pandemic that will carry over post-pandemic that will change the way we work for the better?
Probably won't fly to LA anymore for one-day meetings. That might go away. I think a lot of work will be done this way. I mean, right? More pre-production will be maybe done remotely. I don't know. I think people will be smarter about their time and their resources because we're going to have to absorb the new costs of the pandemic for a while.
Yeah, which is not inconsiderable. These budgets that we're looking at are, so much more expensive. I mean, I guess it's just going to force people to really tighten their belts and really figure out ways to make even more frugal movies, given the added expenses.
I read a great article recently, somewhere in all the great articles that one reads these days, about movies and romance in movies and sex in movies. And it was saying, go back to a movie like Casablanca or some of the pre-code movies to understand how films were made that really conveyed, you know, romance and sensuality without being overtly graphic or frank or something. And I think there will, and I thought that was an interesting article because I thought you can continue. And I have a project right now that has a tremendous amount of pretty, has a lot of sex in it, and we're trying to figure out how to do it, and I think how to shoot it, and what's both appropriate for the actors to do and what's appropriate for COVID and all that. But I thought that was, I read that article thinking there are ways. Very sexy movies have been made throughout the years in what are probably now COVIDian circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, is there going to be a post-pandemic movie in the same way there are post-cell phone movies and pre-cell phone movies where, you know, they have an effect on the plot and what people do, because, you know, when you have a cell phone, you don't have to run to a payphone and stuff. And in a post-pandemic world, will we look differently on, as you said, sex scenes or crowd scenes, like parties and stuff?
I just don't know. Are people going to watch movies with people wearing masks? I don't know. Like, nobody's really made a good 9/11 movie. Maybe some things just, maybe we're just going to wait for a new present tense. Maybe there's no, I feel like there's no present tense right now. It's very hard to figure out how to tell a story right now.
Really true. Really true.
Yeah, we've discussed that quite a bit, you know, like films that could be set 5 years previous to now. There's advantages to set them there. Then you're not having people say, well, hold on, why are there 100 people in a bar dancing?
Yeah.
But, you know, it might be like Anne's indicating, you know, there might be up ahead a time where, you know, I mean, we're living in like historical changes really on speed like never before. So a year from now, a lot of things are going to be a lot different. We hope, you know, in every category.
Question from Patrick. Hey, Patrick. Do you see audio stories like Homecoming or Demi Moore's Dirty Diana as a good way for writers to break into the business and create IP?
But it seems to have worked really well on those ones you cite. I mean, we haven't had that experience ourselves, but it does seem like a great way to have IP.
I agree.
I mean, can you talk further about IP? Do you think this is something that is going to be a thing for the next sort of decade where spec scripts just don't find a footing anywhere in the business?
I hope everybody's writing a spec script right now. There should be a lot of good spec scripts after this. I would think so. Ron's probably writing a spec script and we don't even know it. But I don't know. IP seems like such a television thing, right? Isn't IP really the idea that, oh, it worked in one market, so it'll work in another. It was successful over here, so there's a pretty good chance it'll be over here. I think it's a risk-averse idea. I mean, yeah. Sometimes. Other times it's just, I like working from books and underlying material because there's so much subterranean stuff, right? Your movie's sort of the iceberg, and underneath all the water is all that other stuff that you got from the novel. So I just think it makes for richer
We've
stuff.
had an interesting, oh, go ahead, Anne, I'm sorry.
No, that's it, yeah.
I was going to say, we've had an interesting thing recently where, you know, we saw the movie running on empty again and thought it would be, you know, make a really excellent, there'd be an excellent sequel to that movie. And so in essence, that movie became the IP for a 30 Years Later story that we're working on with Naomi Foner, who wrote the original screenplay, as well as Griffin Dunn and Amy Robinson, who produced it. And, you know, we were thinking it would almost be really cool to envision a double feature where you would sort of re-experience the original film and then see where these characters are 30 years later, at least the ones that are still around, as well as new characters, the grandkids and the this and the that. So that was an interesting thing that we're experimenting with.
Yeah, we're also looking at documentaries that are the basis for a feature film, you know, an adaptation from, you know, whatever, just a straight documentary. I wonder if I'm feeding back again. But yeah, so we like to find it from magazine article to documentary, obviously books. Tom Perrotta we've worked with several times. Books are great. And I don't know if we didn't jump in on saying we want to do a project with you. I was smiling because we already have. We took but we look forward to doing more in the future. We took a project and tried to keep kicking it into the present zeitgeist in the change of, social dynamics. And, we made a noble effort, I think. But
we tried. I just meant like get it all the way there.
Yeah. No,
we had a good time failing, but we did fail, or we just decided it was time to move on. But
well, a lot of films. It's an interesting subject. A lot of films that were considered great films. You look at them now and you think, wow, what a out of touch, tone deaf, sexist, whatever. And that was a great romantic comedy at the time. And you just say the world has really changed. You can't tell that story.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of 80s movies are like that. I think.
Yeah.
But we've had the experience many times where, it takes 10 years to get something made. And by the time you make it, you think, you even know that, gee, if only we could have made this 5 years ago, it would have worked perfectly. But, on some level, you can't say no once you finally get over the hump. And so it's a real dilemma, when you're finally allowed to make a movie and where it fits in the culture and all that. So,
I think I had the opposite, though. I think I had the benefit on Can You Ever Forgive Me? Because when I started making that, no one really wanted to make a movie that featured an angry 50-year-old woman. And by the time I made it, it was the world was ready to listen. So I almost benefited, I almost had the opposite reaction.
Well, I have to say that was one of the greatest producerial feats, given that you almost made it once with the director and actors, and that didn't work, and you put it back together within a year or something. It's a remarkable thing, and that's a great movie. So,
thank you.
There's a question here from Will asking you for some sort of career advice. He's a recent MFA producing enrollee and asks, what's the best thing he can do, whether it's networking, script reading, job at a production company, or make short films, etc., to advance his career? What can any aspiring producer do to advance their career?
Well, the great thing about being a producer is that you don't exactly need any qualifications. All you need is a piece of material and an idea of who you want to align it with. I mean, Ron and I learned that at Sundance in 1989, where we had a book that we had, convinced a writer to let us have a free option. And we stumbled into the first screening of Sex Lies videotape and met with Steven Soderbergh afterwards in a little scrum of people and tried to get him to do it. And it turned indirectly into our first film, which he directed. You just need to love something enough and figure out how to get it out into the world. So, but all of the things you mentioned, Paul, or that the questionnaire mentioned are good. Getting a job, aligning yourself with a community of people, going to film festivals when they come back, but falling in love with a piece of material. That's the most important thing, I think.
I agree with that. And there's no, there is, like you said, there is inexpensive material out there, and there's people can find it, but it's falling in love with something or aligning yourself with a filmmaker. I mean, I think the places I've seen young filmmakers, producers and filmmakers go off the rails, I think, is when they wait for something to be the perfect opportunity, right? Like I think I need $3 million, but I only have $1.5 million. It's like, if you have $1.5 million, make your movie for $1.5 million, right? Just like run at the wall. If you're 75% there, don't wait for the perfect scenario. I was always a person who needed to have a job. So I worked at agencies and I worked for producers and I did script reading, and I worked at production companies, and those built networks. I remember, I always felt like, well, I'll be at this job for a year and I'll meet 2 people and I'll go to another one and then I'll meet 2 more people and then I'll go to another one. And you sort of build a network that way. And But at the same time, I had that file of movies that I was going to make one day, and some of them I've made and some of them I hadn't. So I think it's that juggle.
I mean, this is kind of connected to that first question, but how does a young producer find like screenplays without being overwhelmed? You know, not having a track record.
Well, that's another thing. It seems like there are so many places to find those screenplays. I mean, you know, there's all these lists online, you know, starting, I guess, first with the Blacklist, but all these other platforms of screenplay contests and showcasing screenplays from, you know, graduate schools that are online. It seems like, you know, it's a lot of work because you have to narrow down what you're really interested in. But I probably no other time has so many thousands of screenplays been out there that are theoretically, you know, there for the examining. But just to bounce out what Albert said, I think, you know, yeah, you got to have some emotional connection and love the project for, you know, a personal reason, or at least it's compatible with your worldview. And so you really, you know, want to see it out there. But I would say the other thing is which is not our strong suit, but to really understand the market forces and the way businesses are operating now, and what, you know, what kind of films are actually doable. Because a lot of films we love, when you look back on them, and some we've made, you just couldn't do now, no matter how much you love it, and even though it's a worthy film. And so you could spend a lot of time just holding on to this script or book, you know, that maybe has no viable way to production.
Yeah. Also, I would add that when we first started, for years and years, nobody was sending us scripts, because we didn't have a track record, and where we really made our mark was on books that fell through the cracks. And you know, certainly, This Boy's Life turned into King of the Hill for us, which was our first movie. Cold Mountain was something, you know, picked up on the counter at Book Soup that had been passed on by all the studios and hadn't yet been reviewed. So from big to small, Tom Perrotta's book Election was an unpublished manuscript that, you know, a friend of Ron's turned us on to Tom as a writer, and we called him about another book that he was working on, and he said, I'm not done with it yet, but I've got this unpublished manuscript, that Election, that is somehow trapped between being a young adult novel and a literary book, and would you like to read it? And he told us what it was, and we thought, yeah, that sounds great. And so, you know, those are where we had our initial opportunities, and then eventually, you know, things like Little Miss Sunshine would show up, and, you know, and it got a lot easier. But yeah, it took some time before people will trust you with a screenplay.
And also, I'd say, you know, it's always good not to go down the well-beaten path. Like, you know, if they exist again, go to the, you know, smaller film festivals, really small ones, regionals, because people will go there because there are films there, and, you know, they're, you know, looking to break out themselves. And if festivals don't come back to life early on, you know, sign up for the virtual festivals. You know, some of them are $6 a ticket or $40 for the whole festival. And you know, everyone wants to be at Sundance and Cannes and New York, but there's, you know, 150 other festivals. And same thing for literary material. There's like small journals and book review journals and literary journals, and you know, sometimes great articles are found in smaller publications, or they turn you on to a book that just was not discovered for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's a university press, or it was just overlooked. Also, books that didn't seem to speak to the zeitgeist 10 or 15 years ago might be just right for now, but they've, you know, been overlooked.
Is it still possible to get, like you mentioned, a free option you got on?
Absolutely. 100. Yes, you can absolutely. I mean, I don't know that you can get a free option on a New York Times bestseller right now, but if you fall in love with something, it's a short story, it's a book that has been out of print for a while, and you can convey, I think, in order to do that, when we've been successful doing it, it's because we've been able to make a compelling argument about who we are and what our point of view is, and that we're going to make it a priority and be active on it. And that, so many authors have been burned by the film business and having things optioned and made and not made, or they're skeptical about it. When I approach anybody to ask for a free option or a very inexpensive option, it is about always being able to say, I've got a point of view and a passion, and I'll take good care of it, because that's what you're selling at that point. I also would say, as young producers, there's a real economy in concentrating on writer-directors, because you only have to hire one person, right? The writer and the director in the same body. You don't have to get a writer and then get to a script and get another director. Working with writer-directors is a very good thing to do when you're starting out as a producer, because it's all in, it's all there.
I mean, it's a dangerous game, but you can also, with an older piece of material, you find out it's available. If you can figure out how to get it to a writer-director, then you skip the free option and double back to a buyer with a writer-director. And, you could always lose the project, but that's another thing that if you don't feel you have the track record to convince somebody to give you a free option, just try and get it in the hands of somebody that can make it happen, or partner with another producer, with a more established producer.
The other thing I guess I was going to say, to Ron's point, which I think is a really good one about the marketplace, and maybe I think the movies that just are the sort of independent, execution-dependent dramas that used to be part of, I think, independent film scene that are so hard to make right now. But I think there have been some great films made sort of being smart enough to use a genre to make a political movie, right? You think of some of the movies that have been made in the last few years. Get Out obviously comes to mind, where you think like, that was a movie that was really about something that just happened to be also really fun to watch. So I think the producers, I've not figured out how to do it. It would be fun to do it, to figure out how to use a genre, whether it's a comedy, and you guys have done such good comedies, or a slightly scary movie, to create something that has a plot and a motor, but it can still be about something. To me, that's been a really, I love to watch those movies. I'm always impressed with that.
That's really the trick we're looking for as well. It's sometimes people say, I've got something just up your alley. It's really dark and dreary, and social criticism that's unbearable. No, that's not our alley. The trick is that what you're saying, Ann, that there's underlying ideas that perhaps are the social critique, but they're underlying a comedy and a interesting narrative and a lot of energy and maybe some joy, embedded in it as well. And then, Little Miss Sunshine's a great example of that. It's full of social ideas. Not one character says a thing about them.
We're pretty much out of time. I want to try and squeeze one more question in before my final question. Chadwick, actually there's two questions here, but Chadwick asks, the three of you, you've worked with incredible writers and filmmakers. Do you see an opportunity to leverage all that creative power for TV? And Ron, we're dying to see your second mask, he says. And then Alva says, we'd like to see your first mask. I think she missed that at the beginning.
These are all coming from Chadwick?
Oh, someone else asked about the mask, but Chadwick asked about TV and the second mask.
Okay, and TV, the question was, why don't we do some good TV?
Well, are you planning to do more in the realm of TV, because you work with so many great creative writers and directors?
Yeah, we want to hop over that fence and do more TV. We have a couple things in the works. People told us 5-10 years ago that TV is the future. I don't know why we didn't listen, but we're eager to be there now. So yeah, it's that's a big change in our whatever psyche or worldview is. We love those moments. I'm sure Ann's had great ones where you're in an audience and you wonder whether they're going to love your film or just walk out and say that was a bad experience, because it can go either way, and we love those moments. But I think the moment of having a lot of people see your film as television, wherever it is, on platforms or however it's delivered, that's an equally, somewhat more cerebral, I guess, but an equally satisfying experience. And I don't know, Albert's ready to, with his mass. I have two more I can, display, but Albert, what do you got there? Well, that looks effective anyhow. Yeah.
Bonafide mask. Yeah.
Yeah. No, these are, I won't put them on, but these are, it depends what mood you're in.
What about writers? I imagine someone like Tom Perrotta loves the idea that his novel, The Leftovers, can breathe a lot more, right, on TV. And the writers love the medium because their work is not pared down, but it's allowed to breathe.
Yeah, I
the
think
writers are in charge in TV. Yeah.
Yeah, writers are in charge, and also, I think it's very much the equivalent of a novel, being able to do long form or to be able to work on the canvas of a series. It's a different thing because by definition, there's no ending really to a series. It's something that can keep spinning out, but we're very much trying to get our head around that. I mean, we had a great experience on The Leftovers in the sense that we really loved what Damon Lindelof and Tom did with it. And, we're certainly looking forward to duplicating that. So.
Yeah, and I think it's been fun. The thing I'm definitely trying to do TV and have television projects out there. It's been funny because I think I have a brain that thinks sort of beginning, middle, and end. So the idea of something going on forever confuses me a little bit. But I've also had projects that we started off as TV and now we've moved them to movies. And I have one thing that started off as a movie and now we've moved it to television. The idea of a limited series sounds fun. Quibi seemed like a really good idea. I mean, I love the plastic quality right now that there's so many different kinds of formats. I think that's fun to think about. Where does something best fit? Yeah. It's a good thing to think on.
So we're out of time, but my last question before we go is for your pandemic picks. Everyone loves to know what you could recommend because we're all glued to the TV so much more now. It can be old, new, hidden gem, forgotten classic, whatever you want.
Well, that's the only question that we know ahead of time, Paul, because you sent that an hour before the thing started. So,
Godfather 2.
What's that? Godfather. Yeah. Godfather.
Ron and I always fight to say Godfather 2 first, so I just threw it up.
I brought the box set out to Palm Springs with me to try and burn through all three, but I haven't started it.
Well, burn through the first two.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, that is great. There's stuff that on the platforms, maybe I wouldn't have watched all of Normal People or Mrs. America that were great to see. But for our time too, I was talking with a friend and, it just seemed like Facing the Crowd's a great old film to see for our time. And, those are my choices.
Yeah, for me, I think if you have a family, Paper Moon is sort of a perfect movie. That's always a great one to see. I recently resaw No Direction Home, which is the Scorsese Bob Dylan documentary, which is mind-blowingly great. Running on Empty, as I said before, we saw that early in the pandemic, and that was a real revelation. That's an excellent, excellent movie. So those are some for me.
I think for me, I think I told Albert this. We watched Rear Window really on in the pandemic because it's such a good New York movie, and it's a movie about being locked in your apartment and seeing something happen. And it was great, and Grace Kelly's spectacular, and it looks beautiful. And that was super, super fun. On the sort of more current side, I really was blown away by I May Destroy You. I just thought that was so powerful and contemporary and fresh. And then I watched the Ken Burns documentary about New York because it just reminded me how much New York has been through and that we'll get through this as well. So I think those would be my three.
Great. My pick would be to watch Anne's Can You Ever Forgive Me, which I love, and to go back a little earlier, back to the 90s for Ron and Albert's King of the Hill, which I watched actually a couple of weeks ago, and it still holds up. I love that film.
Oh, if you
Thank you.
watched all the way through to the ending, you saw Ron Yerxa's acting debut.
I did,
Yeah.
yes. As the sort of super, right, at the new apartment
Exactly.
building.
What was your name again? Mr.
And Donald Miller.
Donald Miller. Yeah.
Yeah, that performance has been overlooked, unfortunately, but thank you, Paul.
Woefully overlooked, yes.
No,
yes.
thank you.
So yeah, we're out of time. I want to thank you all for sticking with us and sharing so much great advice for producers listening in. This has been a coffee talk from Film Independent. We will be back soon, but it just leaves me to thank producer Anne Carey. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Paul.
And our team, Bonafide Productions, Albert Berger. Thanks, Albert.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me, guys.
And Ron Yerxa. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, and hey, Paul, if it didn't get a big enough shout out, you know, Film Independent is a superb source of everything, screenings, information, seminars, workshops. Yeah. So that should be the first stop for people. That's an answer to the question, what do you do if you're a producer trying to get projects going?
It's also great for networking. That, of course, is on hold right now because we have no in-person events, but it's a great way to meet, your future peers.
Yeah, and these coffee talks are
Future
superb.
collaborators.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you
Bye,
very much.
guys. Thank
Thanks.
you. See you later.